Chapter 9. The Icy Demise. Vanlith's body shivered in response to the icy breeze slicing through him. Wrapping his arms around himself, he struggled forward, feeling the encroaching numbness. Breathing grew heavier as he attempted to become accustomed to the darkness. However, it was useless. He could see nothing. Frantically, Vanlith began striking his gauntlet, hoping to bring forth some light. The coldness caused this to freeze, refusing to illuminate. Panic set in Vanlith as he felt his energy depleting rapidly. Finding a shelter became imperative to avoid freezing to death. Though he tried to move faster, his efforts were in vain. Suddenly Vanlith heard something rushing past. Stopping, he strained to listen and quickly considered his options. Should he go in opposite direction to avoid the unknown? Or take the risk and follow it, hoping for shelter? Vanlith shivered even more, and summoning the last bit of energy, decided to pursue the creature. Uncertain of what he would find when he neared it, he embarked on the journey. As he stumbled through the forest, branches kept scratching him, and he collided with a tree, losing consciousness, and collapsing to the ground. When Vanlith opened his eyes, his vision was initially blurred, but as it cleared, a glimmer of hope emerged upon seeing the distant light. Getting up, he winced as blood dripped down his face. Wiping it away with his hands, he caught the metallic scent, confirming it was blood from the impact of the tree. Stumbling towards the light, he discovered it was a fire inside a cave. Rushing towards it, he felt warmth without getting burnt, immediately feeling the heat thawing his body. Vanlith's mind focused more. Then he reached into the bag, consuming some supplies provided by Salantis. Staring into the flames, his thoughts raced, and panic set in. Surveying the cave, he found it was empty, with only the wind and the sound of flickering flames. Contemplating why the game brought him back when he wished to stay with his family. Memories of hostile meshes carved in the desk that was in the cave crossed his mind. His thoughts turned to Salantis, wondering why he felt threatened and abruptly abandoned him after saving his life. Exhaustion overwhelmed him, and he fell asleep. Upon waking, Vanlith saw the sunlight piercing through the dark cave, and smelled the extinguished smoke from the fire. Feeling more rested, he continued and exited the cave. Progressing through the foreboding forest, he heard a strange noise resembling a wing flapping, which disappeared, bringing relief. Continuing his journey through the beautiful contrasting landscape with blue and white flowers, his joy faded when a roar sliced through the air. Looking up, he noticed a dark creature flying towards him. Panicking, Vanlith ran in the opposite direction, but the creature, Linsinus, the monster that Onlis summoned, was a dragon with a slim body 3 times the size of Vanlith, landed in front of Vanlith. It stood on its hind legs. Frozen in place, Vanlith reached for his sword, but the Linsinus with pitch-black scales, piercing blue eyes, knocked the sword away. The Linsinus bit into Vanlith's shoulders, flinging him against a tree. In panic, with a blurred vision, Vanlith saw Linsinus approaching. The Linsinus claw pierced through Vanlith's shoulder, lifting him in the air. Vanlith, unable to move, closed his eyes, bracing for the impending strike. That's the end of the chapter. I can't really say much about this chapter as it's a cliffhanger and you have to wait till next week to see what happens. You'll be happy to know I'm starting to write these chapters in advance now, so they'll be published on a weekly basis on time in the next week or so. I now finally published the audiobook of The Swords of Forgotten Memories. It's at the moment in Amazon being reviewed, and so hopefully in a week or a few days it'll be probably made available to the public. But the work that I need to do now for the audiobook is done. So now I finally have free time. I don't have much big projects ahead this year. So now I'm just going to focus on writing these chapters in advance so they can be published on time. Also eventually I'm going to start writing another story that's inspired by Slate from The Swords of the Unforgotten Memories, like a prequel, but not affecting the story of The Swords of the Unforgotten Memories because they're completely different stories. So I'll be starting writing that in a few weeks. Now that my big projects are finally done, I'm now starting to get my dream back, and we're making a short indie horror game, which is the reason I got into writing, because I just wanted to improve my storytelling skills. Now my workload is dying down a bit. I'm going to start to learn how to make an indie horror game, and I'm looking forward to it. I have a few ideas of what the stories will be about. There'll be small chapters of different characters. So one of the ideas I'm working on, I do have about 4 or 5 ideas of like kind of chapter based stories of separate characters that I probably will interlink in one way or another. The first one would be probably simple, where I probably just have it in a cave or something like that, and then where the character's trying to find out why she doesn't remember her past very well. She's sick of the unknown and why she's feeling a certain way, and she's decided to uncover the truth. And it's a horror game, it's probably not meant for kids, for sure, definitely not. So that's something I'm working on. But because my first game, at least tried to make it, I'm probably going to do that first chapter. I'll probably publish maybe a third of that chapter well in advance and see what mistakes I made. Because what I learned from my writing of The Swords and Forgotten Memories, I thought my story was the best teen ever. But when I got feedback from the beta readers, it gave me an eye-opening that the story was still good. I haven't changed. The main story is still there. The bones of the story is still there. But the way I executed in my writing, it didn't come across as good as it is now. So knowing that I made so many mistakes in my writing that I don't want to repeat. So that's why I'm constantly hounding people through this podcast, through my newsletters that I'm building. I'm asking them, if you read the story, please give me feedback so I can grow, blah, blah, blah. Basically, I just want to get feedback so as I'm writing, so I don't make the same mistakes as I did in the first one. There might be areas that I'm not seeing that readers would tell me, and so basically I just want to improve my writing, and the more feedback I get, the more I can improve. If I don't get feedback, I don't know there's mistakes to change. So in this indie horror game, if I do continue doing it, I do plan to do very different chapters. Again, where you play different characters, there'll be different stories to those characters, and I probably will connect them one way or another. You might not play all the characters again after you played them the first time, but I'll probably connect them in some way in the story. And of course, I love my stories. I love the world beneath the shadows, and I love the Swords and Forgotten Memories. I'm 100% going to have Easter eggs in those games. So that's what I'll be doing now for the next few months. I'll be writing my chapters in advance. I'll be narrating my chapters in advance, and I'll be learning how to make an indie horror game. And hopefully by the end of this year, I might have 1, maybe 2 out. I'm excited to write these chapters and fall in love with my stories again. So now, because I'm getting my mind focused on making a short indie horror game, I do have a YouTube channel where I play indie horror games, and I upload a video, maybe 1 a week, maybe sometimes I could clash on to once every 2 weeks, because I'm very busy with writing, this, and work full time. So yeah, I'm still doing that. Probably will definitely try to at least put 1 video up a week. I'll try at least, but my main focus now is writing these chapters in advance. Eventually I'll start writing the other book that's inspired by Slate. I'll be writing those chapters in advance, but it'll be months before I do publish the story. I'm nervous and excited when the audiobook, My Swords and Forgotten Memories, is published, and if people do listen to it. As if you listen to this podcast, you know my voice narration skills isn't the best at all. So I'm going to get a lot of criticism. But I think it's just because I'm not a skilled voice actor. I'm a writer. And it's just a really personal goal for me to narrate my own stories. So I'll be continuing to do so in the foreseeable future. But yeah, basically that's what I'm doing. I'm basically writing these chapters ahead. I'll be narrating these chapters ahead. So very soon, hopefully in a few weeks, I'll be able to publish them on a weekly basis on time, and probably this in around the same time. So I'm excited. I'm finally going to learn how to make an indie horror game, so maybe in a few months I'll have that prototype of my first chapter published. And enjoy writing, enjoy my hobbies, which is basically YouTube. And yeah, hopefully achieve that dream of making a short indie horror game by the end of this year, because next year I'm going to be absolutely swamped with publishing books. As I'll be starting to write the second book of The Swords and Forgotten Memories at the end of this year, as I want to publish it next year. be working on editing this story of the Wolves Beneath the Shadows to publish next year, the book 1. And maybe that new story that I'm planning to write, I probably might at the end of this year might have it ready to start publishing that book 2 next year. So I could potentially have 3 books to publish next year, which means I'm not going to have any time of making any horror games. I'm trying to do it this year because, well, I have the time. I can't really talk about the actual chapter in this book because I give spoilers, so I just have to be quiet. So I decided to tell you what projects I'm working on. If you're curious to see any of the stuff I mentioned, like I said, I'm going to be writing the chapters in advance. I'm going to learn how to make an indie horror game, hopefully publish at least a part this year. Yeah, and I do play indie horror games. I publish episode a week on YouTube. Voice only, not face. So if any of them you're interested to keep updated on, the details in the description below. Probably the best way to keep updated is to sign up my newsletter. So that's basically what I'm doing for the next while. So if you want to keep updated, as usual, sign up to my newsletter, my free book. If you're interested to listen to the audio of the Swords of the Unforgotten Marys, that is self-narrated by me, keep an eye on Amazon, Spotify. It's available on loads of platforms. It's just not published yet, as in the next week or so it will definitely be published. Yeah, I'm interested to see how that goes. Anyway, that's enough talk for me, and thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I can't wait to have the next one published. Have a good evening.